Alex from Oregon here. Welcome to Outside the Box TV. Today's date is July 14th, 2026. Actually, quit coffee for a couple of weeks. Spending my time here in Crestone, Colorado. There's a lot of different things that are on my mind. I'm going to get back into covering the news, and the types of physical things that are taking place, wars that are taking place, possessions that are taking place, teen takeovers that are taking place, psychological operations that are taking place, and how it all lines up with the sun. This is what you're not going to hear at your local New Age conference. This is what you're not going to hear on the Stefan Burns channel. Because if you go to that level and you start exposing real world things, they'll make sure you're limited to 5 views, no matter how right you are. We're going to be going over a chapter in this book where, even though we have different politics, he warns from a decade ago about unrest in Europe by 2025 because of the way the solar flares influence the masses. And so if there's a mass migration situation that they themselves are controlling, and they know how people are going to react, by the time 2025 comes around, 2026 comes around, you have riots in Northern Ireland. You have families being attacked in the UK. Okay, so these things are predictable, and thus they are preventable. That's how this is solution-based. That's how this is actually based in love and peace and consciousness, by acknowledging the what is happening, as opposed to being the head in the clouds or the head somewhere else and not wanting to care about what happens to others. That's where the species, the human species, seems to be separating. And if you think it's about Democrat, Republican, you got another thing coming. Because there's plenty of people in the so-called loving left that have dropped out from heart open compassion, that are running a business, that are wearing a mask. And being 46, having spoken about these things for 22 years, having predicted many things that have come to pass, through that type of trauma of the world discarding the truth, you come to be very good at reading certain people and their allergy to a truth frequency. Which is why this truth frequency is very, very rarely broadcast in this facility and in this room, but on a every few week occasion basis, because of the reality of the real Salida, the real Colorado, the real Crestone, versus the commercial. So let's get into it. We've got some information here where he gives a warning, and he also talks about histories of persecutions during solar flares. Then we have Solar Revolution, a German author. He talks about the magnetic field influences over human behavior, including inclinations towards suicides. And so, as I told you for years, if you have a magnetic field bombardment over people's emotions, some people may not off themselves, they may hurt others. And so this is actually solution-based, and the world is actually in the dark ages. They don't teach this in school. And in fact, the medical professionals would rather people take drugs than learn meditation and conflict resolution. Okay, so when we talk about the ignorance of the school system, it's systemic. This is the evidence. This is the evidence. When there are solar flares, there are world wars. There are people calling for wars. There are people calling for countries to be nuked. When there are solar flares, human physiology lowers to a lower frequency to where they're influenced by demonic forces who want sacrifices. And it's been this way for thousands of years. We're dealing with the archons and the masters of war. And this is what they feed on. They feed on the sacrifices from wars and false flags. False flags like 9/11. False flags like October 7th. False flags like many other things. And Alex Jones, who helped Donald Trump come to power, taught us these things. The man who helped Trump come to power taught us about false flags. So don't give me, we're not going to talk about false flags, when Alex Jones talked about false flags. But he took the money when he came into power. And they changed their narrative from false flags to it's all real, it's all real, it's all real. And then Facebook got involved. And then Twitter got involved. And here we are now with what they're doing. They're hurting our country forever with what they're doing to our reputation, by taking it to a level where we should never go, to where we lose the moral high ground. Now that they have the right to test these nukes, these secret nukes in different places, that attacks human consciousness. We're not separate from that. And we are affected when the earth is affected. And when countries are bombed, if we're sensitive and we're certain places on the earth, we can feel the earth's pain. If you have the eyes to see and ears to hear. A lot of people don't. So we're not going to cover the news here in this place, but we will go ahead and read from some of these books and then get into what's happening in the world somewhere else, right? You can focus more. But it's easier for me to come in here, pay a few dollars for coffee, have a few people annoyed over there. They're on the right wing that want to see Egypt bombed. The guy mocking my human rights shirt, they're right over there. And then I can come here, speak this truth in defiance of their mind control. Because I love that. That's who I am. I'm a gangster. I'm an outlaw. I'm a bad boy against the Matrix, that is. The ultimate bad boy you're going to ever meet. And so in a world of followers, folks, you got to have people that think for themselves. Trust me on this one. You got to have a few people in your back pocket that can think for themselves, that are real psychics, that are not just making things up and worshiping the grays. Because that's all I've seen since I was born. All right. Aurora War and Solar Maximum, chapter 21. Okay, we'll start there. So this is the type of stuff that you're not going to learn from your average solar researcher whose heads are in the clouds. When we have maximum solar flares and northern lights, you have Hitler types coming to power historically. Whether it be Hitler going into Poland in 1939 and the follow-up in World War II, and what we're seeing now with a 500-year high of northern lights. And there's a reason why some people get almost too excited and giddy when these things and these energies come in. Let's continue. I haven't found the exact spot that I'm looking for in this. Here we go. Hitler's omen and then the beginning of World War II. Right here. The aurora of January 25th, 1938, an extremely rare appearance, sparked fears in Zurich, Switzerland, of invasion by Germany. Okay. It was also reported how Hitler saw the intense red hue over the night sky in the east in August 1938 from his mountain retreat in the German Alps. He took it as a sign that now is the time to shed blood. Now, that's not just something coming from the world leaders. That's coming from individuals that say, now is the time to end them all. And they're speaking on behalf of a dark force, that which we choose to call Satan. And that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with sacrifice, human sacrifice, and people with an allergy to facing the truth as to what is happening. As a soul, when they incarnated, they didn't have an agreement like I did to bring light to these things. Maybe they had an agreement at a soul level to cover it up. So we can go deeper into that. But he also gets into the magnetic field influence. And so those that can control the electromagnetic field thus can control humanity. And then what are we reading about right now in the news? They want to create some sort of apparatus in space to stop the northern lights. They want to change our world from a human world and the way things were according to nature into something else. So it's not just Elon Musk and the plan to put satellites all over in space or to put AI data centers in certain places so there's light pollution. We're being changed as a species. And so that is the opposite of the message that I was raised in the New Age movement in the 1980s. Where there were all these predictions about the ascension and the great 2000 shift and the great 2012 shift. And here we are in 2026. They're doing the same thing here. Often you'll hear about the Brotherhood of Light and the Galactic Federation of Light. And anytime you hear people talk about those folks, they're compromised to not talk about the people that are being wiped out. Brotherhood of Light, Great Brotherhood, the Galactic Federation of Light, Ashtar Command. Okay, so this deception on the part of the Archons is universal, which is why they've convinced people to not believe in them, because they're running these groups. The Archons are running these groups, and they're issuing through fake channel messages stand-down orders for the people receiving the channel messages. They did it to my mother, and they're doing it to people right now. So I'm very well versed in deprogramming people, but you have to be open to it. And right now, with cell phones and the influence, a lot of people are not open to deprogramming, or healing, or inclusiveness. They're into returning to the way things are and not open to constructive feedback. And this is the message that I'm going to go out of the earth speaking until the day I'm no longer in human form. Because there's going to be future generations of humans without parents. They're going to need information as to what happened here. And I'll be there for them in 2075, where many other people won't even write a single book. They'll just be on their cell phone, looking for their next hit in the Archon matrix, looking for their next dopamine rush through the phone, through the phone, through the phone, through the phone. At least I'm trying to import truth and promote synchronized meditations, harnessing the powers of the mountains. They're not into that because my energy is scolding to demonic forces. And somebody has to actually be at a certain compassionate vibration to see light in me. And a lot of these people, they don't see light in a person who cares about other people that are wiped out. They're turning away from that. And there's a reason for that. Now, when it comes to people with psychic powers, keep in mind that being psychic has nothing to do with being moral. Although you cannot become a super master psychic while being super corrupt. But you can work for entities or demons or archons and be fed information to then manipulate others. And this is something that people do in relationships, romantic relationships. There could be somebody who has a lot of psychic information on a man, for example, and then she comes in to that man's world with a lot of psychic information. And then that man becomes duped by that psychic. He might even begin to think that she is a goddess, when in reality, he may be duped into a situation where he is the entree, where his louche is what is for dinner. And so don't be duped by these people that can do these acts of, ooh, I can read your mind. Maybe they're working with other forces that are helping them to read your mind. Do not venerate counterfeits over the true creator, because when you do that, you will see your business, your world, your reality, your right to parent your children collapse. And right now, they are losing their rights. And there are people being silent about the rights that are being lost to parent one's children. But we'll come back to that. But this is about the solar war. It's not just about countries. It's about relationships. It's about households. It's about calls to the police. It's about crazy people in the forest lighting fires. It's about the people in Northern Ireland lighting the mosque replica effigy on fire. These are rituals, folks. And I'll remind you that the magical workings of Dion Fortune in the 1940s have been duplicated today for the dark side. So while I promoted Love and Light, Dion Fortune meditations, the people are more interested in the dark application of the synchronized group effort. You see what I'm saying? So the magic is being done on the far right side. They're doing the magic. On the so-called left side, inclusive side, it's service to self all the way. Culturally appropriated yoga, anything they can grab from Eastern worlds and making it theirs so they can maintain their power, that they're better than other people. It's about maintaining power. It's about being a wizard. And by the way, that was a great song called Stargazer from Dio. It's about a wizard losing its power. And then the people on the ground that are the slaves going, what do we do with our power? Stargazer, Dio, 1976. Is that not us? And is that not us in certain social situations? So I'm going to now pull from Carol Moore. And she's a female who knew about these things in the 1960s and the 1970s. And then we'll go back to the book Solar History and get a little bit more information. But again, this is the original gangster. This is the OG. It is Alexander Jezetsky. He constructed an index of mass human excitability in which he traced the incidence of wars, revolutions, riots, expeditions, and migrations from 500 BC to 1922 AD. He found that 80% of the occurring happened during a 5-year period surrounding the peak of solar activity, which increased negative ionization in the air. This process is known as hysterectomy. You see what I'm saying? So he figured that out 100 years ago. Robert Becker figured it out. Edward Dewey figured it out. And the New Age movement maybe heard of Burl Payne and went, that's not what the Galactic Federation of Light told me. They told me everything was going to be fixed. They told me that we're all going to be loving, enlightened beings, that we can't stand up for the weak, because that's negative. This thinking is why we're in this mess, and we're dealing with him and what's coming. We're not going to deal with the negative. That's why it's going to progress. And you need souls that are born with a destiny to do right. Not all souls were born here wanting to change this. Some like this. Some want more cell phone towers. I don't. I'm looking forward to the sun healing the earth through what needs to be done. And it may not happen in my lifetime. I highly doubt it. I really do think that we're going to end up in the Jetson age where the military-industrial complex lands on foreign countries from satellites and bases in space. This current generation landing on Iran, landing on Iraq with jetpacks and stuff, with future weapons that they put in video games. That's not the New Age dream my mom told me. What we're dealing with is the opposite of what I was raised in. And so the shift, the ascension, folks, is your soul rising above the world and not having to come back here. That's the ascension. The ascension is not being sentenced to Iraq in 2050, whereas I'm convinced a lot of people are and should be. Okay, the ascension is not coming back here. It's not going up to the spacecraft and seeing the remodel, as my mother and Carl told me in the 1980s. During the, quote, forced marches to Seattle, Washington. And look at what happened to Seattle with those beams that came in. They destroyed Seattle. All those ships, all those aliens. Look at what they did to Seattle. They destroyed it. And so people need to think long term. Venerate the spiritual masters, not the little beings with green skin. Putting those on the front to my ancestors and everybody else. You know, the whole story of the origin of Crestone is fascinating. They have a book at the library, and it's titled, Is Crestone the Vatican of the New World Order? There's some truth in it, but I do think there's spirituality here, to a certain degree. However, it's been said, and when you look at Crestone on Google Earth, nothing is there. Google Maps, the street view. And then you see, like satellites, when you go out camping. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Anyway, let's go read from Carol Moore, this female activist from the 70s, who's saying what I'm saying, so that you understand that I'm not alone in this. Give me a second. This is from my book that I'm holding. That's right, my book on the solar maximum. And so yeah, obviously I was guided here, knowing that there's electromagnetic energy that I can aid in my growth. Here we go, Carol Moore. Carol Moore writes how she predicted the fall of the Iron Curtain of the late 1980s and how activists can incorporate the knowledge, and I would say magic and mass meditation, but we'll get there, I'm pretty mystical, can incorporate the knowledge of the solar cycle into their strategies. Here it is right here, Carol Moore, okay? Whereas most today don't talk like that and understand the cycles of the sun and war. She understood that. And most activists don't understand that, but they might be into witchcraft and astrology, but not actually understanding solar cycles in a general sense. Okay, so let's continue. Of course, people will always rebel. Now think about what's happening right now in the news, for good or bad. And think about the propaganda to get people upset. as I'm reading. Of course, people will always rebel against injustice, or let me add, the perception of injustice. The others are coming to get you. The others are coming to get you. The perception of injustice. As long as there are militarized states, politicians, they will always scheme to launch new wars. However, both these phenomena peak with large numbers of protests and wars with greater numbers of participants during the height of the sunspot cycle. And then you can see the rise of neo-Nazi attacks during solar flares in the 80s in Portland with people being beat to death. This is all cyclical and preventable. Now, I don't know if future generations are going to pick up on the connection with the violence to women and Solar Maxima, but I continue to see it in the news. But the awareness of it, modern incarnated humans don't want to connect those dots because it flies in the face of some sort of a systemic belief system that we're not affected by solar changes, or that we should never actually give attention to other people that are victimized, that somehow is negative. And that's traditional New Age theology, which I reject wholesale. I believe that we are to protect the weak. I don't believe that it's negative to draw attention to correlations that are science-based. So I'm going to stick to my guns and wait for the women of 2075 to incarnate to be able to receive this information. Government leaders often respond to mass protests by starting wars. Now think about this. She wrote this decades ago. By starting wars to unite the people and suppress dissent. Now, does that sound familiar? Also, they themselves, think about the guy in office, targeting the Muslim children with hijabs. They themselves may get caught up in the mania caused by negative ionization and launch irrational wars. I'm just going to pause for a minute. Let's make it work in here. During the last sunspot height cycle, 2000 and 2003, news and editorial writers first focused disapprovingly on the big anti-globalization protests, which marked the return of street fighting, and also First Patriot Act under Bush. After 9/11, protesters largely abandoned their passing fancy with street fighting and returned to non-violent street protests. Also, it was during that time period that I got off heroin and I got clean. And a lot of people in Portland, Oregon that were previously doing heroin got off heroin when the solar cycle stopped. This is a powerful connection that everybody can learn from. Okay, so we're in the thick of it now, folks. That's why you're seeing the crazy stories about the woman biting her child. There was a few stories in Portland about the woman biting somebody. It is the others, and I don't mean racially. I mean like, Dark City, Matrix stuff, coming in and possessing people. We'll come back to this. Now that we are at the bottom of that cycle, there is much despair among activists in many movements at the relatively low level of energy, the dissolution of activist groups, and the lack of reaction to increased government oppression. And again, pundits and reporters can't help commenting. Some blame it on the lack of a draft to motivate young males to action. Others blame it on a loss of faith in democracy, on division among peace groups and the internet, on fatigue with protesting or the protesters. This is key. Activists since the 60s, like myself, have lived through several sunspot heights, 1968 to 1971, 1979 to 1982, when I was born, 1989 to 1992, and 2000 and 2003. And then she wrote this back then, I would add to you, 2009 to 2013, where we are now, 2022, upwards to 2027. So we're in a 5-year window now. Okay, continuing. And I wrote a long chapter about my life and solar cycles, like stuff that happened in my personal life. We can think back at our own experiences of several years of frenzied activity, or, More dating. More dating goes along with more solar for people in the scene. With big meetings and big protests, when the least indignation might lead to, solar minimum that is, riots, rebellions, civil war. So it's COVID-19. When we went through COVID-19, which they knew what they were doing. They did it during a solar minimum when they knew we wouldn't rebel. If they did the COVID-19 lockdown during solar maximum, there would be more protests. You see what I'm saying? And because of the minimum influence, through mind control, through the trance-like nature of the TV, which had a lot of people, they had a lot of people in that trance that they had to succumb, including those close to me, to the system simply because we cared about others. And because we cared about others, they were taking that and using that against us in profound ways. And so I ultimately believe that that is a surveillance tool. Okay? Yeah. All right. Now, check this out. And we'll just hold it there. And think about what happened to me. If government intelligence agencies are on their toes, they have bookmarked this page enough experts studying the effects of sunspots on activism so they can squelch and redirect such energies when they rise again. It's hardly silly for activists to also look at the evidence that these cycles have influenced all of human history and to learn the implications of these cycles for activists organizing today and in the future. Carol Moore writes the old saying is knowledge is power and the truth shall set you free, but it's going to be like Neo in the Matrix. People are going to be like, no, I can't believe it. We're not affected by solar flares. We're not affected by these things. I'm in control of my own destiny. Really? Then quit your job and go out in the forest and control your own destiny. Give me that crap. All right. So you understand where this is going? They figured this out 100 years ago. Russian intelligence agencies, when they locked up this man. Let's go back to basics. Got to go back to school. They had to be teaching this when you're 5, man. This guy. Mac Daddy. Grandmaster Flash Chazinski. West Side. In the house. White man. Russian. Ooh, Brewski. They put him in the gulag. They took away his freedom. They took away his voice. They sent him to the coal mines. They made him write articles denouncing his solar studies. They oppressed him. Now, do you think that was an accident? Do you think that that's just something that they do in Russia? They oppressed him. They did this. But we're so loving here. We were so nice to Tesla. Weren't we so nice to Tesla? No. They suppress technologies to suppress you, and they suppress you because they want your soul. 1, 2, 3. It's a formula. And they're hitting your buttons just like they hit your buttons of your ancestors. And maybe that's why you're here. Okay. Thank you very much. Maurice Cotterell. I love Maurice Cotterell because Maurice Cotterell explains. Check this out. And this, look at this. This is what remains of my second book, everybody. A piece of paper used as a bookmark. We'll come back to the symbology of that later. Solar influence over the rise and fall of civilizations. Right here. The rise and fall of people getting it on and then being wiped out. People getting it on and then being wiped out. As if we're basically being farmed by the Archons. It's as if we're in a farm. Have you ever considered the Matrix wasn't a movie? Have you ever considered that your allegiance to these political forces and your silence about the issues that matter may be the epitome of the Matrix itself, as Morpheus drives Neo through the town. Oh, I used to eat noodles there. So good. Oh, I used to vote for that person. So good. Oh, I used to listen to that talk show host. Oh, Alex Jones. Ooh, this person. Ooh, that person. These are all hallmarks of a fallen physical world. We got to get out of here, folks, if it's the last thing we do. We've got to get out of here. It's a fallen world. It is not paradise. It's resembling hell. And that's where some of us are starting to agree that this influence coming in is actually bringing fire in the heart. It's not just, oh, I'm sitting on the mountain meditating. It's bringing about something in people that's manifesting in the news. Okay, where do we go from here? Okay, so while men have the solar cycle influence, female have a moon cycle, but we're all influenced by the moon and the sun. These are other charts that deal with the rise and fall of wars. Here we go. Major battles during solar peaks. World War I, World War II, the Vietnam War, the Korea War, the first Afghan War, the first Iraq War, the Gulf War, and what's happening now. All these things are right in line with the solar cycle. Now here's another one. And if I was to come to Sedona, I would give a talk that would have a lot of science and documentation, where they have talked to the mainstream media about the influence of the solar flares and the solar cycles. I would do that. Cycles of economic depressions and recessions. Here's another one. Okay? It just keeps getting better and better, and my coffee is only half gone. Okay? And we're 31 minutes on time? And so if I come to Sedona and I put on a talk, the first 30 minutes will be the documentation on the solar influence over personality changes and or suicides. So that then we can open up a conversation to looking at the real world events that are taking place. And then we ask ourselves, what has been happening in the collective hive mind, which they can control and influence with technology, especially cell phones? How they can steer a society away from books and an inquisitive, almost psychic, intuitive nature into something that is basically what I've called for years the prototype personality, which is something that's programmed like an android and filled with subliminals and triggers and trigger words. And so we have been made as humans to be programmable with the power of suggestion. And technology now is here to completely destroy us and remove us from our significant others, remove us from our parents, remove us from trust, and connect us from the grid that is waiting and bidding its time to come after you, me, everybody. I'm working to get God's respect so I can stop coming back here. It's called samsara. And as I said earlier, a lot of people are coming back to Earth, probably to Iraq in 2050. We're talking about like a whole group, and this is natural. This is how souls learn and evolve. And these are the original teachings from the East. And they may be some of the original teachings in yoga. And so hopefully now you understand why it's important to the dark forces to co-opt teachings of the East, certain body movements of the East, use them for service to self, rebrand them, make them about somebody in particular having the knowledge, being basically the guide, the guru guide, and then removing, I guess, the warnings of continuing to, live in a world where they create negative karma for themselves. Also, one of the things that I'll talk about, and I'll talk about it right now, a little bit lower, how just by being this way and talking this way creates a field of energy. Because I'm distracted right now, so I'll come back to it, to where people will get away from me. Because they understand there's a certain amount of truth that's being discussed. But they can't necessarily shut down the truth, because I'm paying for coffee, and I'm not yelling, and I'm not, cussing. So the only thing that they can do is to isolate. But once I'm already isolated, which I am, what can they do? Well, there's still ways that things could be difficult for you. But you see, most people, they buck under pressure. We can look at Stefan Burns. Every time I talk about solar flares, be like, what about Stefan Burns? Stefan Burns is so great. Stefan Burns does not talk about these issues. And if he was to, he probably would lose his platform. He would lose his support. So he's in a particular box. Suspicious Observers is in a particular box. And the Crestone Energy Fair for years has had David Marciello come here and speak. And he has been saying for years that you would have a solar minimum, as in almost no solar activity, So these people in Crestone have been watching a charlatan, but because they don't follow solar cycles, they don't know that they've been conned. And so all they're trying to do is get your money. And David is a bad guy who lives in Pagosa Springs. Oh, he is, hey, I'm a rich guy who has a wife. Look at our property. Let's tell you how to survive the apocalypse. He's not a loving man. And so I reached out to the Crestone Energy Fair and I said, I'll do a talk for you and I'll help your people understand what's coming. No reply. Okay. And so I can't fix that. I can't change that. I know that I tried to befriend. There's even a guy named Magic Mark here, or Bob, who does vortexes. He looked at me like he saw the devil. And so I know what's up, bro. It's cool. Yeah, no, Donald Trump's not God. No, whatever, though. I am the light. I have returned. I am here. And I'm not going to give up till I get out of human form. I am tired of this prison planet, and I know too much about what's going on here on the earth with all the world's people. We're in some sort of an energy farm, and through this solar stuff, we keep being rebrought and rebought into these conflicts until we stop hurting people. It's like Mark Passio said, we need to stop. If we are prisoners here on the earth, and in order to stop being prisoners on the earth, we have to stop stealing from others. That's his general philosophy as a vegan. I'm not a vegan, but I get his point. His philosophy is that the humans here are basically sentenced to be here because of some sort of a penance before the Creator for either murder, this and that. So now you understand what they're planning for a bunch of people alive today. A bad incarnation over there in 2050. They'll create the whole prison in Iraq, as I predicted. They'll deport a bunch of people. They'll drop a nuke. And then War of the Worlds will manifest in 50 years or something. They put all this stuff in Hollywood is coded warnings of a future without morality. We'll leave it at that. Now we'll go back into that. That's the point that needs to be made. These horror films are allegories for the other side when you stop caring for people and what it means to be a human changes. Okay, so now we're going to find the area here where he warns about what would happen to the immigrants in the solar maximum cycle because it's predictable and the world leaders did it to them on purpose because they hate them. That's why they did this to them. It wasn't enough for them to drop bombs and whatnot and stage events. Now they pushed them in areas where they sick the people on it. Just give me a second. We'll find it. Because we don't have the same politics, but he has a scientific mind like I do. So he's able to see the obvious like I can. Okay, chapter 6, long-term overall decline of violence. So let me just say this. What if David's right? What if we will see a reduced solar activity? That will be less wars in the end. Because less solar activity means less wars, less world wars. And it's a period of quiet, and there's less babies being born. So a solar minimum is not an apocalypse. That is fear-mongering to the next level. The earth has natural cycles. These people are connected to the grid. And I'm the person who unplugs. I'm the closest thing to Morpheus that you'll ever meet. The Matrix is a movie, I am real. The Matrix is a movie, I am real. And that's what a lot of people don't understand. And so the way that I'm living is the way that others have lived 2,000 years ago. And they're just getting started with their crucifixions. Big time. And the reason why is because the people alive today care more about the dopamine fix of social media than stopping genocides. And that's how they're going to get their way in the future. And in the future, the fun will just be inside you. So just imagine that we have to work for the system, like creating propaganda and fake news. So you just sit there shaking your head like this, creating hatred and fake journalism and putting it out on social media, blah, 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 and then you get paid for it. And there'll also be the future where people get paid as assassins with cryptocurrency, and they'll be paid straight from space through some sort of a wire transfer. And then, of course, we see the influence over the death of family. and the opening up of the door for the devil to be right at your door with these technologies. And then children seeing things they're not supposed to see. And then the new age crowd and everybody going, don't focus on the negative. Don't talk about what they're showing to the children and stuff. Let's just like focus on the mountain. That is what gives them more power. When they're just sitting on the mountain going, oh, I'm okay with this. This is fantastic. My mountain's so great. And that's what we're dealing with over here in some cases in the Baca. Isn't it so great? I've got my property and I've got my kingdom. I hate outsiders. And the thing is, I am a product of outsiders. Outsiders destroyed Portland. Outsiders from California made it unaffordable. Outsiders destroyed the town that I defended as an American. You know the Hulk Hogan lyrics? And outsiders pushed me out. And so what we're dealing with is hardcore musical chairs, or unless you have major money, you yourself could be an outsider. Right? Unless you do what you're going to do. And what has this society done? Here's what they direct the males towards. Here's what they direct the females towards. And how it's been increasing since the 1970s. And here we are 50 years later in the next dimension. So what is it? What did Jamie and Freeman warn us about? The super soldiers and the sex workers. Okay, that's how they're trying to socially engineer society, to bring us back to human trafficking and back to wars without end. And that's the real world beyond this. Fantasia. And isn't that what this is? Isn't that what the Heart of Rockies is? Is this not Fantasia as the nothingness continues to eat and eat and eat away? Man, when I came in, the guy was like, why can't we just nuke Egypt? War's coming to American soil. And he just kind of like spouts that out when I walk in. And it's like, are you just saying that? Or are you trying to like drop my frequency? So every day, there's an attempt to drop energy frequency through things that are pointless, right? And then when it comes up that there is this inevitable outcome with China, they want to dominate the conversation and steer it to where it's only going to be a right-wing thing or a thing that they talk about, where at least I'm on record for 19 years, since 2007, interviewing Leon McGon about America being invaded by China and Russia. Now, I'm assuming that there's going to be massive solar activity when this takes place. And as I warned, that I think that this is going to take place after another 1 million people are killed and there's massive concentration camps. So I made that prediction before ICE was created. Well, ICE was created, but before the return of the administration. These predictions that I made about the two main warning signs, I've been saying for about 20 years. And so we will see this massive human trafficking wave once the currency goes to nothing. And so as far as I'm concerned, the humans are against me, but God is not, right? The humans are against me, warning them, but God and the angels are not. Which is why my faith will continue to be in the angels, relocating me wherever I need to be for the coming changes. Because in the coming changes that are coming, it's not a simple situation where you can just run to the rescue with a megaphone and bring the people up to the mountain and go, we're gonna like fight them back at this spot. That's for them if they want to do that. After 20 years of warning about that scenario, unless it comes through the official Amy Goodman or controlled left or right echo chambers, unless it comes from one of those angles, they're going to reject it as schizophrenia, unfortunately. And so what does that mean? It means that God works in mysterious ways. What God does is put the truth in the bodies of those that will be rejected by the people of the day, just like the time of Jesus. Okay, so God will covertly put the truth and will put people through tests, and we'll see if they will act like the Romans during the time of Jesus Christ's persecution. And that's essentially what's taking place, because this is a reincarnated Rome, as Philip K. Dick warned us about. He is the author from California who died in 1982, who wrote a book called Valis, who is the inspiration behind Total Recall and many other movies. Philip K. Dick was a man before his time, like me, who also at one point ate dog food. As a white man in California, at one point he ate dog food as a genius. Okay, so it is not uncommon for God to make some of us that know things basically live in squalor in order to help develop the soul into something that is so powerful, so transformative, that it doesn't want to stay on earth, that it doesn't want to, and it doesn't have to reincarnate, let alone procreate children for the purpose of staying on earth. And so for some of us, the purpose in not having children is to ascend off the earth completely and not be attached to anything that's happening on the physical. And that's what's interesting from a cosmic, spiritual, intuitive perspective. The purpose behind, maybe a variety of different bloodlines in which there is a variety of deep spiritual traditions and heritages coming together in one body, who's rejected by the people of the day, who doesn't fit into the mold of what a man should look like, what a man should sound like, who then, by being different, is then safeguarded from the temptations that are often brought in this world of physicality. Capiche? You know what I'm saying. And so by my rejection from this world, from Dallas, from Portland, from all these places, from all these people that have tried to help, from my mother, from the ex, from all these people spitting in my face as I turn the cheek, these things are liberating me from a sense of responsibility that I have to save them with this information, with what I know is coming. No, if they're going to maintain this negative karma, tippy-toe, into that, then I can't help them, and I'm not authorized to any longer. My work is done. My work is done. I had to do what I had to do and face what I had to face. And I dealt with police harass. I dealt with basically false witness. I dealt with a sea of women not caring. I'm worrying about violence against women during solar flares. Talk about misandry to the next level. That's straight demonic. What kind of person can hate a man who's psychic, who's trying to help women stay safe? Now, that's had me in a deep state of intuition, and the results are terrifying. But it sets one free from, hey, please accept me. Hey, please read my website. No, they're not going to read the website. They're just going to laugh at coloradodreaming.substack.com. It's a joke to them. And what am I dreaming of? What am I dreaming of? The speech of Martin Luther King, being treated as an equal. That's what I'm dreaming of. I'm dreaming of where our character, not our color of our skin, dictates our outcome. I'm dreaming of no longer being treated like a black person in 1920 in the South. That's what I'm dreaming of. And so I'll take California Dreaming, the song, and I'll take the speech of MLK, and we'll make that my intro so that people understand what's going on. I'm calling BS on inclusiveness in Colorado. I see what I see, and I know it's coming in 2045. I know it's coming in 2035. I was right about this. I'm right about the next step. And I'm right about people being fake and not worth my business. Oh no, to not enter certain businesses if their heart isn't worthy of my dollars. And right here, I've created my own space where I'm not in their space. And this is going out there. Who is this going out to? This is going out to the Dallas Observer. This is going out to Willamette Week. I have a secret society on the internet to where I'm so high level on my intelligence gathering and sharing that I have to put a site on lockdown. Nobody gets in, nobody gets out. A joke on the last part. Then you've got mail. And I pop up in their world with a flash of light. I pop up in their world with a clearing. I pop up in their world with an epiphany. I pop up in their world with an idea whose time has come that no army can stop, because they'll be reading my books in 100 years. Addictively. Off the grid, in bunkers, whole communities holding hands, praying to the gods. They'll be reading my words. Let's continue on here. See, this is what it's come down to. It's come down to my second book being nothing more than a few pages. But don't worry, I'll get copies later. If the highest expression of technology regarding harnessing the power of the sun is used to oppress the people of the sun by powering weaponized or oppressive surveillance drones that are coordinated with solar power satellites and other solar powered weapons, is that sun entity expressed by that society impressed? Did you get all that? Did you get that?
So you must be going to California.
Read that. God, if God, who created the sun, is seeing the humans on the ground doing all this nefarious stuff with sun technology, thus is the sun entity impressed? Answer A, B, C, or D. I won't answer your questions. Because I know the answer. This is why God was going to rescue us through the solar flares. These Jinn, Archon, Asura forces have to leave the Earth. And it's through the solar flares, and maybe I'll be part of it when I'm gone, that we are going to free the next generation of females and males from what's coming. We're going to free them from the ashes that are coming through the solar flares. All right, that's the agenda. I think we've said enough. Let's wrap things up. We're at 50 minutes. I do recall sending this URL to the boss of the cloud. Okay? He knows what's up. And I'm gonna pitch my reality here, and I'm gonna turn my tent into a temple. I'm gonna turn my tent into an office. I'm not just gonna sleep in my tent. I'm up there tending next to alcoholics and stuff that drink alcohol and start singing opera, and they think they're real sexy and stuff when they do it. Well, I don't find it real sexy and stuff when they do it. But what it is, it's a lesson in compassion. And I got a beautiful black cat, and I went to Salida yesterday and I bought like a table, and I got candles, and I got solar power lights. And it's like, folks, I've got the blueprint for a spiritual community on the cheap without spending thousands of dollars. All you need is the right people in your corner. It's okay to have some money. It's okay to be rich. What's not ideal is for people to just create an echo chamber where everybody's rich or where everybody is following the same channel message. I am promoting spiritual communities where modern spiritual masters meet together at the table and share their notes. I'm advocating the next level of the meetup. I'm advocating harnessing the power of the sun to save the earth, to save our communities, to save our city. That's what I'm talking about right here with this book. I'm talking about pure freedom. I'm talking about total servitude ultimately to the Creator and respecting the sun and understanding the sun. You know, and as I live here in Crestall, you know, as the sun gets hot, you know, I have to go for shade. I experience the yin and yang of the sun. So while the sun keeps me warm, and while the sun is necessary for me to not freeze, the sun can also be too hot. So it's like a sweet spot. So there's a positive and a plus. And so each day with the solar cycle, you have a high and a low. At noon, we have the solar maximum of the sun's activity and the sun's intensity. And then we have the solar minimum. Interestingly enough, during that noon period, that's also the period in which it's believed that demons come out of the sun. And you see where I'm going with this. It is duality within the sun and the workings of the sun. You have duality. I'm not going to give up on finding this section here where he talks about immigrants. And so we want to harness the power of the sun in a positive way. And with that extra energy that we have, we want to do something positive with it. If someone is highly animated with solar energy and it's not directed in a positive way, then, and I've done it too, then they can get on the internet and say something that is hurtful to someone else. And in our modern world, right, it's likely coming through the form of a text message. Okay. So again, what you're not going to hear from the other solar researchers is that there's an increase in wars and people being lit on fire and countries being lit on fire through bombs and war. And so there's something in the consciousness of human beings that at times can lead towards the demonic, right? And so you have this bonfire tradition going on in Northern Ireland. Now, notice how it's happening during solar maximum. Whether you support or don't support it, it's the issue necessarily, but you shouldn't support it. And this is definitely for people like Rich that may be watching from Coin 6, others that are in the media that are watching me now. You're starting to see what's happening in the news, and you're seeing me, of all people, point to the planetary K index, point to the space weather. Again, several stories about women biting their children or biting people in Portland, Oregon. There is a spiritual presence there that is entering the people. Then you have the men that are running around naked grabbing children, trying to kidnap children, as I warned about. Sex monster predators, sex demons in Portland, Oregon, have been unleashed like something out of Ghostbusters. They laughed at me 10 years ago. Humanity doesn't have the maturity to go, you are right, these things aren't happening. Because of the bias that it holds to keep people like me down and oppressed and squished so that their sense of superiority can uphold itself on a sugar pedestal, which easily is brought down by a thunderstorm from the gods. So we have a lot of paper tough guys in this world that talk real tough, when in fact they're intellectually weak. They can't argue a point, but they can make threats with guns and stuff. Or vote people in that like to do things or make women property, and then the women that love them. The men that want women to be property and the women that love them. Now, repeat that 10 times to understand what I'm trying to show you about this world. We men are not being supported. They're trying to stop the so-called patriarchy. We're under attack. We're targeted. We're slandered. And that's the real story of the earth and people like me that walk the earth in the 2020s. Until, of course, we were no longer walking the earth. We have periods of crusades. We have the persecution of the Cathars. We have the early stages of the Inquisition. And who are the Cathars? Who are the Cathars? They were the Gnostics. Who are the Gnostics? They would be like modern conspiracy people today that aren't racist, that are onto the truth. The people that are seeing reality as it is. Okay? So it's basically going through history here into different periods. 1780, Civil War, birth of communism. What should we do today? Should we go to the library? And so I've actually been avoiding this place and the library, but today I just don't give it. How could solar activity and space weather affect human mass excitability? Okay? Can you hear me now? How could the sun and its heliosphere affect human behavior and excitability and thus lead to alterations in generalized civil behavior or causing people to bite their kids? As the phrasing of the question implies, did someone say demons? In the following considerations, I am going to presume for a minute the very strong correlation between human violence and solar activity, as well as the correlations of human progress and low solar activity, is not random. He said human progress during solar minimum. So after the rain, after the solar rain, after the geometric storms, there is the settling of the dust. Literally, the cosmic dust settles. Literally. And the body becomes more grounded. Does that make sense? And then the brain is functioning better. It's firing better. It's not all, but see, during that solar maximum period, you can see this as the downloading period for those that are spiritual, or people that do Qigong, that type of a thing, you know. Whereas a lot of people in this world that don't want to raise their frequency, they're going to tune out profoundly. They're going to tune out profoundly. Again, over at the table here, the people that like to be elitist. By me being here and speaking intelligently, it sort of shuts down any effective psychic attacks from them. When I confront their bias and confront their lust for war and basically put it out there that I'm aware that they're fakes and phonies, like to hang around people that want people nuked and stuff. So it's real fun for me to speak around these people energetically because I know that my aura is toxic to them and the females that talk to them because they're always a collective with military people and people that kill people. They're always hanging together, they're always corded together, and they're always allergic to me. Whether or not know about my background is the issue. It's an energy. And I'll tell you what, let's talk about Gypsy Fox. When I try to talk to him during solar flares, he says that I'm off when he's off. And then when he talks about what he's learned from solar flares, not that I really want him to cite me, but when he has cited me, he was speaking ill of me. He talks about like some, I'm joking, but maybe not, made up guy named Chris, who thinks, like everything is fake and everything is controlled. And these conspiracy people, in particular modern white people, they seem totally disconnected with how the sun actually functions as a spirit because they and whatever they are don't identify with the sun and understanding the sun. They're identifying almost as if like they're of a different like species than me in some cases, which can be alarming. Are they? Or is it just upbringing? Is it just programming? The same could be said about racial hatred. After walking the earth as long as I have, after meeting the people that I've met, it leans more towards hereditary than programming. And that's the only way to get out of this mess that we're in, is for there to be greater change. Because the people alive today don't want to make that change. It's not in my mother's DNA to care about her son. Because I was made so different. Now, if she is hardwired that way in the Matrix, and we're saying this objectively, folks, scientifically, without me crying or being emotional. If that's how it is in this Matrix, then how can the rest of the world accept me? If my mother can and my father can. I was made too different, too high voltage, said in the AC/DC voice, to be considered a human being. So I am basically living in a real world 1984 novel where you have the party members and you have the non-party members. And I'm like a non-party member who's existing outside of society for my own protection and their own sense of feeling safe and stuff. Because of course my energy is a threat to people with demonic attachments. It is a threat and I can't change that if I was born to be that. If I was born with a certain purpose, I can't make the aura one that's not accostic to demonic entities that are hitchhiking in the back of people. And so that's why a lot of people will just be disgusted when I walk in their businesses because they're harboring just pure hell. And that's what I had to go through in Salada yesterday and heal from energetically. And it took all night long to get those people out of my space that were just so freaked out I walked into their business. So these are things the New Age movement won't talk about. These are things these small mountain towns that keep things the way they've always been can't talk about. The deeper metaphysics of making sure that some people are always outsiders, that have something to offer you and protect your children. Maybe help you get out of jail or hell. Because that's essentially what this is coming to. Essentially what this is coming to is we are dealing with the idiocracy situation. Now, where am I going to find? Okay, here we go. Modern Grand Maximum. Here we go. We're getting closer here. Building up the anticipation. Jeez, man. All right, I'm just going to start reading additional studies and we'll work our way there. 2018 study revealed that high solar energy at birth had an adverse effect on human lifespan. Increased solar energy at birth shortens human lifespan by an average of 8 years. I was born in 1980 during massive solar activity, so that's played a role in my physiology, psychology, spirituality. Same thing with people born close to my birthday. And then when you get further away from that, you'll have different soul groups coming in with different agendas in their incarnation. So some of us are working for the light and some are working against it. And sometimes I theorize that solar minimum babies on the opposite side of the maximum versus solar maximum babies have different allegiances here on Earth. So some are working on behalf of the light and some are working on behalf of the darkness. All right, so historic references of mass hysteria and collective mental health crises. Essentially what we're seeing right now with the news. Continuing on. Cosmic rays and genetics. Okay, and there's more information about Hitler going into Germany. With some nice elevator music on in the background. Here we go. Well, thank you for your patience here. Here we go. Ready? Are you ready for this? Likely increased excitability in the next Schwab maximum, 2023 to 2026. The third phase, Schwab maximum, period of maximum excitability, we must consider that between the two lows of 2020 and 2032, we are still facing the Schwab cycle maximum around 2025, even if it's a weak maximum. This bears a risk of civil wars and revolutions, instigated by elitist, radical, collectivist opinion shapers, plus it also bears the risk that a broad frustration over failed multiculturalism will flip into real racism and nationalism in disregard of the rule of law. Thank you very much. This concludes this edition of Outside the Box TV with our Solar Wars focus. I'm Alex from Oregon. Catch you on the flip side.